Welcome to Fayette Footprints, a podcast about the people, places, and events that make up the culture of Fayette County, Georgia. My name is Kenny Blum. I'm a longtime resident of Fayette County, a bit of a history nerd, and now an amateur podcaster. Today, I'm going to continue our journey around Fayette County as we talk about some of the history of the different municipalities, and I had the pleasure of being introduced to Mr. Frank Carden of Woolsey, Georgia. Frank, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kenny.
Can you tell us a little bit about your connection here to Woolsey? Did you grow up in this area?
I did. I've actually been here in Woolsey since 1956.
Okay.
My family's always been in Fayette County. My mom and dad purchased a home here in 1956 and lived here ever since. Well, I say we lived here in Woolsey. Personally, once I got married, I moved off to Fayetteville, up to the big city.
The big city.
Well, my wife and I lived there for a year, and I didn't like big city life, living in an apartment there. So we bought a house back in Inman, moved to Inman, and lived there for a few years, and then later on built a house back here in Woolsey. So with the exception of just a few years, I've been in Woolsey most all my life. So.
Right, and you've got business connection here also, correct?
Yeah, my dad actually started a garage here in Woolsey. Actually, he started it when he purchased his home here in 1956. There was a little barn on the property, and he at the time he was a mechanic for the Redwine brothers that owned the Ford dealership in Fayetteville, and he was a mechanic for them. So when he would come home in the evenings, he would actually work on his neighbors' cars in the evening at night, while he was, and actually after Mr. Ed Davis bought the dealership in 1958. My dad worked for him for a few years, and then in the early 60s, sometime around 60, 61, he built his building that I'm in now, and he'd been in business here in Woolsey since 1956. So.
Can't get much older than that for a company still running, can you?
Exactly.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about some of your earliest memories of Woolsey?
Gosh, everybody that you talk to that grew up in a small town, they compare, their small town to Mayberry.
Right.
And really Woolsey was a lot like Mayberry in my opinion. We didn't have the big stores and that kind of thing, but we did, the town was full of kids when I was growing up here in Woolsey. A lot of boys, and we roamed all over town. I mean, there was a schoolhouse here, the church was here. We had a store here, actually a couple of stores. This building that we're in right now was actually one of the stores. So my earliest memories of Woolsey were just roaming around here with all the kids that grew up here. So,
playing outside all the time.
Playing outside.
Right.
Our parents would tell us, in the summertime when we weren't in school, after breakfast, you go out and don't come back.
Don't come back
so we were in the woods and we were everywhere. So.
Yes, sir. I had a similar upbringing, and even though it wasn't right here in Woolsey and Fayetteville, just outside of Fayetteville, it was most of the summer was outside all day long. Yep. Can you tell me a little bit about the founding of Woolsey? When did it get established as a town?
Actually, Woolsey is one of the oldest towns in Fayette County, besides Fayetteville. Actually, Woolsey was incorporated in 1893.
Okay. Yeah.
Dr. I.G. Woolsey actually founded the town. He moved here sometime after the war between the states.
Right.
Bought 900 to 1,000 acres here.
Oh, wow.
And started a farm, and he actually donated all the property for the town when it was incorporated in 1893, and donated the property for the school and the church and all those things. So Woolsey's actually one of the oldest communities, not the oldest community, but the oldest incorporated town in the county, other than Fayetteville. So.
Right, and it's a good reason to be named after him if he donated all of that just to get the town started.
And it was actually, in the beginning, it was actually called Woolseyville.
So, Woolseyville?
Yep.
What made Woolsey grow in those early years?
Well, like most other communities in the South and in Fayette County, it was cotton and that kind of thing.
Agriculture.
That made Woolsey grow. I mean, that was just, and it was, those kind of things.
Right. How has that changed over the years? Is there still a lot of agriculture out here?
Oh, gosh. Not so much now, but up until probably the late 70s, early 80s, a lot of it was agriculture. Wow. And, my business now is the garage here is mostly working on old farm tractors.
Oh, really?
Every family around here still got some old tractors, and I work on the old farm tractors for them. So,
I'm assuming here in the town hall we're in one of the older buildings that's still up.
yes, this is actually one of the few remaining buildings that are still here from the original town that was built. Yes, and this was originally one of the mercantile businesses in Woolsey, and we were able to get this building and actually renovated it in 2018.
Oh, so fairly recently, right?
Hall. Yeah.
Right. There's a whole placard right outside the door I started to read on my way in that tells a little bit about the history.
Yep.
That's awesome. It's awesome that you preserve this place and now make it still part of the center of Woolsey. Have there ever been any hard times over the decades? I'm sure.
Oh yeah, the old timers tell us that Woolsey was actually one of the most booming communities in Fayette County at one time. I mean, there were lots of businesses. We had a bank. We had a post office as far back as 1895.
Oh, wow.
Dr. Woolsey applied for the post office to be built or to be here in Woolsey. And actually, the post office was here for almost 100 years before it closed. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah,
was there train lines through this area?
there was actually a train that ran through Woolsey in the late 1800s up to the late 1930s. It was a line that ran from Atlanta to, it was originally supposed to run from Atlanta to Hawkinsville.
Okay.
It actually wound up just running from Atlanta to Fort Valley. And,
Okay.
And but the tracks were taken up in 1939. So I guess the thing that really killed Woolsey was probably the Depression and the boll weevil.
Yeah, I'm sure. Boll weevil, yeah, because there was so much cotton growing in this area, right?
Yep, that was pretty much the crop here. So.
Gotcha. Going back even further in history, wasn't this a major thoroughfare for the Creek Indians?
Yes, that's what we're told, that the Creek Indians settled this area between here and the Flint River and on down into Spalding County. And actually, the original settler here was a Thomas Bowling Gay. He actually was one of the first people that acquired the land that Woolsey now sits on. He held it until Dr. Woolsey bought it back in the mid-1800s. So.
Are there any annual events or annual traditions that go on in the Woolsey area?
Not so much right now. We're trying to get those kind of things started back up. Matter of fact, we've got a small event coming up for the 4th of July.
Okay.
One of our newly elected council persons, Jennifer Jackson, is trying to head up a 4th of July kind of a picnic thing for the community. So hopefully that'll be the first of many. So.
And a good year to pick that up for
That's
250.
right. Exactly. Yeah. And we did back years ago when I was a kid. There was when the schoolhouse was still here. We actually had like a fall festival every year where the community got together. But probably in the late '60s, early '70s, all the people were busy with their jobs and those kind of things, and those kind of events kind of changed. Yeah.
Looking back over time, there's always some legends from the area, which might include your father, because he's still got one of the oldest buildings standing here, one of the oldest companies. Are there any people that are kind of famous to the Woolsey area?
Legends, I guess you could say. Then there's some people that are kind of famous, I guess, and I can tell you 2 or 3 things. Probably could tell you more. But the biggest legend in Woolsey is the legend of the Woolsey ghost. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a newspaper article on the wall you can read later. But supposedly, back around the time of the war between the states, the resident of the house here in Woolsey, the old Woolsey house, supposedly when he heard the Yankees were coming through this area, that he hid his gold over in the woods near where I live now. And but after the Yankees moved on, he forgot where he buried his gold. And the legend is, people would see a light over in the woods and claim that was the guy that was still searching for his gold. So, some people believed it, some people didn't. I know a lot of people that claim they saw the light. And Mr. Jim Minard that we talked about earlier, Mr. Jim said that it was probably just phosphorescent gas. So.
That explains a lot.
Talking about other things that happened in Woolsey. One of the things that actually got Woolsey started back on the track of, trying to be a better community than we have been in the past, I guess, was my dad was one of the councilmen here in Woolsey for a long time. And he owned a piece of property down the road where the convenience store is. And this was probably early to mid 80s. And he sold that piece of property for the convenience store to build.
Okay.
Well, the people in the community didn't really understand what was going on, and they didn't like the convenience store being built. So there was a big controversy in the 80s here about that convenience store being built. Well, in the end of the controversy, it really wound up being that the reason it was built, there was no zoning ordinances for Woolsey back in the 80s. So there wasn't anything. Once my dad sold the property to the group that wanted to build the store, there was no way for the town council to tell them what they could or could not build. So, but some of the citizens didn't quite understand that, and there was a big controversy. And actually, the news of that, the AP press picked it up, and that story went all over the country. So that's when some of the town council decided they would resign after that because they didn't like, what happened. So I was elected to the town council, and the mayor at the time, Gary Lagis, was elected at that time. So after the late 80s, we actually started trying to put together zoning ordinances and that kind of thing to govern the town. So we actually made the national news back in the 80s because of a little bit of a controversy. So.
What is the one thing about old Woolsey that you miss the most in today's world?
Gosh, the thing I miss the most is a lot of the old, when I was a kid growing up here, there were a lot of old buildings still here. Woolsey, at one time, the majority of the property in Woolsey, after Dr. Woolsey died in 1902, sometime later on, around in the 20s sometime, a guy named William Baker bought the majority of the Woolsey property, and he started a apple and peach orchard. And he operated, and at one time he was the president of the Atlantic Ice and Coal Company in Atlanta. And he retired from that job and moved to Woolsey and started his apple and peach orchard here. So, there was a lot of old buildings associated with that operation. And, those buildings over the years began to fall down and weren't repaired. And so there's just a lot of old buildings and a lot of old history and that I missed from seeing back in those times. So.
For the newcomers moving into Fayette County today or into the Woolsey area, what is that one piece of Woolsey history they need to know if they truly want to know what it's like to be in Woolsey?
The growth of Woolsey actually started probably back in the 70s when a lot of the farmland began to be subdivided and new people started moving in. And the one thing everybody always talked about, even from back in the 70s, even until today, is they moved to Woolsey because it's quiet, peaceful, not having the daily rush like in some of the other suburbs. So the peace and quiet. So really to understand where we are, they really need to understand where we came from. To go back and read the history of Woolsey and, find out, why we're here to begin with. So.
Yes, sir. It's a good balance of quiet, but still close enough to anything if you want to get into Atlanta. Yeah,
and we've done 2 or 3 surveys through the years and surveyed the citizens to ask them what they wanted Woolsey to look like. And every survey comes back the same. We don't want big growth. We want small community. We want big lots.
Big lots. Is there a minimum size lot in Woolsey? I know there's
yes,
still.
Back, some years ago, every town and city in Georgia had to meet certain qualifications to be what's referred to now as a qualified city.
Okay.
And to be able to do that, you couldn't just have a town that had just 5-acre lots.
Okay.
There had to be some diverse lot sizes. So some of our minimum, we have actually got some 1-acre lots.
Okay.
But most of the town is made up of probably 5 to 20 acre
tracts. Okay.
Tracts. Yeah.
Okay. So still very much connected to the land.
Yes.
Is there anything that you think is important for someone to know, just kind of as a closing about Woolsey? What are your final comments about your community?
Well, really, what I'd like for people to know about Woolsey is actually, we talked about where it came from, and the history of Woolsey. It's, like I said, Mr. William Baker actually, owned most of the property here for a long time, and he was actually killed here in Woolsey.
Oh.
He was, matter of fact, Bruce Jordan's book, one of the books he wrote, there's a story there of Mr. Baker's killing back in 1932. Ooh. Sometime after that, sometime in the late 30s, probably late 30s, a man by the name of Mr. William Mitchell bought Dr. Baker or Mr. Baker's property, and actually stopped the apple and peach orchard operation and started a cattle farm. So there was about a 900,000 acre cattle farm here in Woolsey and Mr. Mitchell actually sent one of his sons here to Woolsey to run that operation. And his name was Duncan Mitchell, and his wife Jane came here with their family to run the cattle operation back in the late 30s. And Mr. Mitchell died. Mr. Mitchell was at that time worked for Georgia Power Company, and he became the president of Georgia Power Company.
Oh, wow.
And and another interesting thing about the Mitchell family that lived here is Doug Mitchell, one of the guys that helped found Peachtree City. Actually, that was Mr. Duncan and Miss Jane's oldest son.
Okay.
And another interesting fact about that when Doug retired and moved out of Peachtree City, him and his wife moved to Texas. When Doug moved to Texas, he actually moved to Fayetteville, Texas.
Oh, did he really?
And it was Fayette County, Texas.
Yes, I've come across Fayette County, Texas.
Just outside of Houston, yeah.
Oh, that's a fantastic. Well, I tell you what, one of the best things about any part of history is always in the details. And being able to talk to people who've been here gives me the details that I'd never be able to find. So thank you for sharing all that.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks again for listening to Fayette Footprints Podcast. I hope that we brought you a little bit more information, a few more details about our community and about Woolsey. And I hope that you continue to listen in the future. I will have more podcasts coming up on more of our older towns, some of which may not even be around anymore. Check it out at fayettefootprints.buzzsprout.com. And if you have any questions, you can always email me at fayettefootprints@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. And thanks again, Mr. Carden, once again for joining me on today's podcast.
Right, thank you, Kenny.
During my last several interviews, I have heard the most fascinating details as we were packing up equipment and concluding the interview. I may have to keep my phone recorder on just to capture these great little tidbits that are being shared. For instance, Frank told me that one of Woolsey's most recently elected council members, Miss Jennifer Jackson, is the granddaughter of Gladys Sams Jackson, yes, of relation to the Sams in Fayette County, who served on the council in 1930s. But the cool detail is that she served with an all-women's council and mayor at the time. So this sleepy little town in Fayette County was quite progressive in their heyday. I had the pleasure of meeting Frank Carden in the Woolsey Town Hall. As he noted, it was renovated just under a decade ago, and you'll find not only a functioning town hall and community center, but a small museum of original and other items representative of Woolsey's history. The building itself is a wonderful journey of restoration. Originally the mercantile building lining the track side of the railroad, the building was in poor shape when the property was donated to the town. Reconstruction included straightening and strengthening the structure, adding more windows, preserving the north face whitewood siding, and reusing the pine foundation beams as landscape timbers around Town Hall. The front porch has been rebuilt to accurately represent the original porch, where it was said that kids would often play marbles. There's a mason jar atop one of the bins inside the building, holding several of those marbles that were found during the renovation. And Woolsey isn't done. Just next door, the antique shop is the old Woolsey Bank, and the town would like to renovate that structure too. And right behind the old bank is a big project underway at the Woolsey Church. The property was originally donated by Dr. I.G. Woolsey, with the stipulation that the property be returned to the family if it ceased being used as a church. Woolsey Baptist built a larger sanctuary, and eventually the building was no longer being used. The family then donated the building to the nonprofit group Friends of Historic Woolsey with the intention of restoring the building. Now, if you go to their website, friendsofhistoricwoolsey.org, you may not recognize the white-sided building. That's because the original siding was covered with brick, and the phase of removing that brick will come right after the project that they're starting next week, when they'll be replacing all the windows with newer windows that will still replicate those old original windows. Historic buildings are disappearing across Fayette County. If you or your company would like to help with the Woolsey Church renovation, go to their website, friendsofhistoricwoolsey.org. This will also be linked in my show notes below. Thanks again for listening to this episode. I really appreciate everybody's support, and I hope that I'm sharing some tidbits of oral history that you didn't know about Fayette County. You can catch all of my episodes at FayetteFootprints.buzzsprout.com, and you can reach me at FayetteFootprints@gmail.com. And you can also find this podcast on all of your favorite podcatchers. Join me again next month on Fayette Footprints.